Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgianna.
Today, we are going to be talking about some more psychological defenses against emotion. Feeling things in your body is so important to know how you want to direct your life and your relationships and to create the life that you want. And that's why we're talking about all these things and giving you our personal real life examples.
Yeah, and I think part of sharing our personal real life examples is in hopes that you are willing to see the common humanity in all of us and to be kind to yourself and also to plant seeds of hope that things can shift and you can grow your capacity to feel some comfort in the discomfort of emotions and feelings and sensations so that you don't have to rely on these protective tools as much in your life.
Yeah, totally. So before we get into it, we're going to do a body-based self-connection practice to connect us with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast. And today I'm going to lead us through a little practice that helps us get in touch with different sensations in our body. A huge part of learning what doesn't feel good to us is paying good attention to what does feel good to us. So let's start by finding an anchoring spot. It might be your bum on the chair or your feet on the ground. If you would like to, put a connecting hand somewhere on your body that feels nourishing. And notice your breath. And I want you to bring to mind something, someone, somewhere in your life that you've experienced that feels good and safe, where you feel comfortable. It might be with another person, or it might not be. Just summon those sensations, summon that memory of feeling good and safe and comfortable. And take a moment to clock those sensations in your body. What does it feel like in your body to feel safe and comfortable? Where do those sensations live and what do they feel like? G, are you able to share with us what's coming up for you?
Yeah, I feel very sturdy. I feel my connecting point is my butt on the seat, and I have my hands on my ankles. And I like to bring to mind the presence of Shalina. And I notice I like to place her somewhere off to the side, close to me. And I notice that my body just goes into this slow, soft place when I imagine her close by. I have access to like a deeper breath and a softer breath. And I always like imagining what she might say to me. So I think I was imagining her say, "Hey, love," which is how she addresses me. "Hey, love, you deserve all the good things in life." That's something that I could really imagine her saying to me and wanting for me. And I can feel my body just settle hearing that.
How beautiful that you can have this experience alone in your living room.
Yeah, this was a really big thing for me. I used it a lot during a really hard time in my life. I used a lot during COVID when I was going through really hard things and we weren't able to see people. And I would just bring to mind people who were meaningful to me, whose presence in real life helped regulate my nervous system. And I just imagine them in my space. And I would imagine where I would put them. Would we be snuggling? Would they be offering touch? Would they be saying anything to me? And it always shifted how I felt inside. It always
Mhm.
shifted the sense of feeling more connected and less isolated.
Mhm.
And it was a reminder for me that even when I'm physically alone, I have access to resources. I have access to people, people who have a positive impact on me. And it's been
Mhm.
really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're describing one of the coping mechanisms that's on this list. It's the
Mm.
healthy one.
Oh,
Uh,
look at that.
yeah. Yeah, right. Ways to, but you're describing having that experience so that you can be with the challenging feelings or the challenging experience that you're having, not so that you can ignore it, right? You
Yeah,
can
it's to
co-opt
be
any of
with
this.
what's tough, right? And I like to also see it as I'm reusing an old positive memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to, look at it through the lens that we're always reusing memories. We just tend to reuse the memories that were tough and
Yeah.
hard. And we replay those in our mind, and then our body reacts to that over and over again. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to sprinkle in, like, why not reuse some of the really sweet memories and let my body re experience that? That feels
Mm-hmm.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
adds to our current experience. It's empowering in the moment instead of distracting from the current experience or hiding from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always feel like it adds to my resources. It's like if I were playing a video game, I just collected 3 more lives
Yeah.
and I can go out into the world again and, face what's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. That's a really nice way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to read
Yeah.
through this. We're going to put these four together. These are always seem to be in groupings for me that are either totally interrelated, or in this case, I think they're all sort of a bit of an intellectual endeavor. So I will read through them all quickly. And G, just interrupt me. I'll pause between each one, but if there's something you want to
Okay.
say. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one is reaction formation. When you're angry with someone and force yourself to be nice to that person instead, this is an example of reaction formation. Kill them with kindness is what comes up for me. It
Mhm.
goes on to say, and I think this is a really important defense that most of us engage in at some point. When one has lost a love object, being angry all the time without feeling the love, or feeling the love all the time without being angry, are common examples of reaction formation. That so
Mm.
resonates. I'm thinking about breaking up with somebody. There was so much love, and now you're so angry and hurt that you can't even access that anymore, you know?
Mm. That's interesting. I think, like, I have a different coping mechanism, I think, where I, like, stay connected so much to love that I can't even feel the anger.
I've marveled at that about you. I'm like, how are you revisiting the lovely parts of this? I would be so upset.
I think it's because, like, that was my coping as a kid of, like, just look for what's good. Just look for what's good. Maybe if you stay with what's good, you can also believe that you're worthy of love and being treated with care. If I have to look at how someone treated me poorly, my automatic thought would be like, I'm no good. I'm not good enough. Right? And I don't want to connect with that feeling. So let's just remember the love.
Hmm.
And that must mean I'm lovable then if I just remember that there was love there.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
a pretty unique skill you've got, and you've got such a loving heart. It makes sense that you would be projecting that into your coping mechanisms and onto other people.
I remember someone I was with, he said, "You remember everything." I was like, "I do remember a lot." And I said, "I also remember the good things."
Hmm.
And he said, "Yeah, you're really good at that." I really
Mm,
try. And I've had to learn how to balance it with seeing the things that weren't good,
yeah.
feeling the things that weren't good. That was the other muscle, right? I have a really strong muscle in seeing what's good, remembering
Mm,
what's good. And the weaker muscle for me was seeing and feeling what's not good, what's not working. And
right.
I really had to practice like widening that lens to see the whole truth of it all.
That's huge. Unsurprisingly, we're the exact opposite. It would be like, forget all the good things. They didn't mean anything, you know? Meh. Just, yeah, go hard defense, offensive defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, anger was always something harder for me. I mean, I remember actively trying to help myself. I'm like, if I could just hate you, I could get
Mm,
over you. And I remember one time I sent this message. I was so angry and so hurt. And I sent this message that I knew would like dig. You know, when you're in relationship with someone, you know where the soft spots, you know where the wounds are. And I was so hurt. And I had up to that point been so nice, even though I was hurt, that I was like, I'm done being nice. Like, now I'm really going to tell you how I feel. And I'm just going to push that button that I
yeah.
know would be the worst button to push. And I sent a message. And then, true to me being me, I sent a follow up message that said something like, and I know you're, always well intentioned and you would never try to hurt me on purpose.
Right.
And years later, we sort of debriefed about that situation. He's like, that first message you sent, that was like, he's like, that was a low blow. Like, that was rough. That was tough. And I was like, yeah, I will own that. Like, that was with intent to hurt. Like, that wasn't just me sharing my hurt. That was with intent to hurt you. And I own that. And he says, but true to you, immediately after you share something that's very sweet that I also knew was true.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez. This is bringing to mind that the idea of cruel to be kind. Um, when someone is mean on purpose to make the other person not like them and not feel so hurt that a
Oh.
relationship is over or whatever it is, it'll be easier if she hates me kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's, we do such powerful things for and with and at each other's emotional pain.
Yeah, I remember being on the receiving end of that, where I was even prompted to say at the end of this relationship, I said, I don't understand why you have to burn everything to the ground. Like, I didn't understand. Why could we just not have like just an adult and conversation about what's not working, what is working, how we see things progressing or not progressing? But like, he did things that were so extreme that I'm like, there's no way we can recover from this. We can't recover from this. Like, it would like it'd be very, very tough to recover from this. And I
Yeah.
think he knew that. I think he knew that it's felt too hard to be able to just say we love each other and it's not working and so we need to part ways. And
Mm,
somehow it felt easier or more familiar to just burn it to the ground. And I
yeah.
remember feeling so sad about that. I'm like, why? Why does it have to be like that?
That's so hard. Yeah. I think
Mhm.
with big emotions and we don't know how to be with them, I mean, it's easy to be in love and it's impossible to be in conflict. So it's just like we either have everything or we have nothing at all. It's those extremes expressed in that
Mhm.
way.
Yeah, it is really hard. I think it's really hard to hold, I have deep love and care for you, and this isn't working. It'd be
Yeah.
easier to just feel hatred and rage towards someone and just part ways. But that's really just covering up the
Yeah.
tenderness and the sadness and the grief and the
Yeah.
love and the care.
Yeah. Especially if we've gotten used to being with difficult emotions instead of pleasant ones. It's like, let me just go find solace in the very painful emotions that feel comfortable to me. you know?
And familiar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Whew.
okay, sublimation. This to me reads a lot like suppression, which is consciously not being with our feelings, basically.
Hmm.
Um, and exercise is the example they give. So when one chooses exercise to get rid of one's anger at a superior at work on a regular basis, it is an example of sublimation. One burying oneself in one's work in order not to feel the emptiness of a personal life without meaningful relationships is another example of sublimation. In sublimation, one does something that is neither damaging to oneself nor to others as a way of not feeling unpleasant emotions. So
Can you say
relatable.
that last part again?
In sublimation, one does something that is neither damaging to oneself nor to others as a way of not feeling unpleasant emotions. So
Okay.
suppressing with healthy tools.
I was the queen of sublimation. I would like a crown and a sash, please.
How did you sublimate? What were your go-to sublimation tools?
Well, when I was young, the go to was to be with friends. I always
Hmm.
had social plans, always. And it was to not have to feel the pain at home of having to mediate between my parents, having, like if I really let myself feel the things that were said to me at home, like that's pretty devastating. So let's pretend that doesn't happen and go hang out with your friends and have a good time. So
Yeah.
definitely friends, social life. I think doing well in school was a way to feel something good
Hmm.
and to feel a connection to teachers and approval from teachers, to not have to feel the disapproval at home. Um, and then that progressed as I got older. It was like social activities, hobbies. Like I loved
Mm-hmm.
finding new hobbies. And you'd never find me sitting at home any evening after work or any weekend. I'd always be out doing something
Yeah.
and learning stuff, reading, learning, like studying courses, always learning and working. And I would have never, if someone would have said, "You're a workaholic," I'd be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Because work was my play also. Like work was just, it's just doesn't feel like work. But when I really looked at the amount of time I put into it and what it took away from, I'm like, I'm not sure if there's a healthy balance.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a little bit of like a double-edged sword in that I think what made it hard to see that I was using this coping tool like to the max is that they're all very socially acceptable things to do and often actually praised. Oh, you
Mm-hmm.
have such a great social network, you have great supports, you're excelling in work, you're always, doing something fun. My choices for coping were not drugs and alcohol. And I feel like those are the ones that are more frowned upon in society and come with more of a stigma. I was doing things that people would think were lovely things. And so
Mm-hmm.
it made it hard for me to notice that that was actually out of balance and coming from a place of self protection than truly that. I mean, I did enjoy parts of it, but it was
Mm-hmm.
mostly fueled by self protection.
Yeah. I think we're so skilled at not being with ourselves, even when we are. You're reminding me of a 3-day isolation retreat that I did as part of my mystery school, and I actually couldn't believe it. So I think I spent a bit more than 3 days in isolation. So no contact with other people, no internet, no TV, no distractions. You were only allowed to do rituals and drawing and journaling. So Oh, and cooking. I did the slowest, tiniest chopping of things. Like there was so much I was doing to not be with myself while being isolated with myself, and I didn't actually realize that until the third day, the afternoon of the third day. So everything I was doing was designed to bring you closer to self, to still your mind, to not be distracted. And yet I was able to spend basically 3 entire days not going anywhere near my emotions, which I had gone in there with the intent of working through or revealing something to myself. And when I was completely out of activities to distract myself with, I was like, well, I better do some breath work or something. Like, what will the next 11 minutes contain in this isolation? And it was doing the breath work that opened something. A whole bunch of stuff came up at that point. But the point being here that you can really hide from yourself doing healthy, well-intended, self-reflective activities without really coming anywhere close to what you're hiding in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I was doing so much helpful stuff. Reading about um feeling feelings.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's an
Mhm.
amazing segue into the next two,
With
which are rationalization and intellectualization. It's just perfect. So relatable, all of these tools we're coping with. So rationalization, I know we've talked about this before. When someone you're attracted to turns you down, and to avoid the pain of rejection, you use the logic that you were not really attracted to them at all. This is an example of rationalization. So we're just
I
like,
feel like every person must be able to relate to that. Oh, I didn't care
oh yeah,
anyways. I
totally.
didn't really like them.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
wanted
I
to
didn't
be
like you
single
anyway.
anyways.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was
These are
really my
tropes.
time to like come back to myself anyways.
That's right. Yeah, I never wanted to be in a relationship. I really just need to be spending some more time alone. Like I think I knew that, and magic. Um Intellectualization, reading about things, talking about things. This is also very relatable. This blurb is a bit longer, and I am going to read the whole thing because at the end is yet more relatable stuff that I think in our focus on love and light out in the world can really be a huge distraction from some painful emotions, and he kind of gets to that. So here's the blurb on intellectualization.
Can I make a request? Can
Yes.
you read it a little bit more slowly so my brain can track it, please?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
When people focus on thinking about a situation rather than how they feel about it, as when people focus on psychologically analyzing those who have rejected them to avoid feeling their feelings about the rejection, this is an example of intellectualization. This example shows how multiple defenses can be used in the same situation to push away unpleasant emotions. When people convince themselves there is something wrong with the person who rejected them, so they can arrive at the logic that there is nothing wrong with them, thus preventing them from feeling the shame or inadequacy that people often experience when they are rejected. This is an example of rationalization. In that they are focusing so much on the intellectual pursuit of analyzing the other person rather than feeling what they feel about being rejected, they are also using the strategy of intellectualization. Another way in which they could use intellectualization in order not to feel their emotions around rejection is by using spiritual statements, such as, God loves everybody all the time. Therefore, nobody is ever rejected at any time. God is love. I am one with God. Therefore, I am love. Ooh,
Hmm.
familiar.
So
Spiritual
familiar.
bypassing. Yeah, reading all the
Yeah, I
books
think I
about
did.
it.
Yeah, I think I did less of the spiritual bypassing, but I did tons of rationalization and intellectualization,
Mm-hmm.
like heaps of it. And I think after breakups, I would just live there for a while, a long while,
Yeah.
until I knew, like, actually, it's going to be more helpful to just notice how you feel in this
Hmm.
dynamic with this person. And
They're
yeah.
both going to be there, right? Our thoughts and our feelings are always going to be there. And our brains are such powerful tools for making things make sense so that we can function, but also so that we can
Mhm.
not feel uncomfortable feelings. But still, our body is down there feeling those ways and causing
Yeah.
reactions based on that in our lives.
Yeah, I remember doing so much rationalization, and I think I'm just in the perfect position, if I'm not careful, to do tons of it because I understand child development, I understand trauma, and I can be very compassionate to why someone behaves the way they do. And I remember going a lot to, well, his childhood was like this. He had this hard relationship with his mom and that kind of relationship with his dad, and always felt like this or felt like that. So, of course, in relationship, it's going to show up like this. And all of that's probably true.
Hmm.
But staying in that place was taking me further and further away from, how does it feel to be in dynamic with this person right now? How does it feel to be treated the way you're being treated right now? Is this what actually lights you up? Is this what you actually desire in partnership? I wasn't feeling any of that stuff because I was
Yeah.
just up in my head trying to make sense of it. And when I could make sense of it in this way, it also wasn't about me.
Hmm.
It was just about him. And that felt safer.
Yeah.
To then to feel like, how does it feel when someone you deeply care about treats you in a way that's unkind?
Hmm.
I don't want to feel that. I don't want to reflect on that. Let me just keep trying to, this next piece, intellectualization, psychoanalyze this person.
Yeah.
I did so much of that. And like, oh, he must be avoidant because of this and such, and he must behave like that because of this. And I remember, like, and I've heard so many people do this, Googling, asking, does an avoidant ever come back? Right? Do they miss you? Do they regret running away? All this stuff that I'm like, I wonder if you collected the 3 a.m. Google searches of heartbroken people, like what are they searching up? And it's all things to try to get these answers for things that don't actually help us be with what's actually going on inside of us. The
Yeah.
feeling of sadness, the feeling of loss and grief or anger and frustration, or, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, these are coping tools to help us avoid those big feelings. I think this is especially a trap for compassionate and agreeable people who understand others, you know? I identify with that a lot. I can understand what and why most people are doing what they're doing. It's rare for me to not be able to see why somebody is doing whatever it is they're doing. And it was in my nature to hide from my own big feelings, to expect my feelings to not be received. So it's a wonderful
Hmm.
tool to not have to face any of those.
Hmm. And it's such a, I think, celebrated part of us, when you can be you, when you're a very compassionate person. I'm very good at seeing the good intentions in people. I'm very good at seeing the strengths in people. And I think that's what makes me good at what I do. But it was so out of balance. And
Yeah.
I was using it to not feel things that were hard to feel and face things that were hard to face.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've always marveled at, I remember when I worked for a very large social service agency at some point, and, inevitably I go into social situations like misunderstanding what is here. I'm like, oh, a bunch of therapists, they must really know themselves well. And I was just shocked at how many people had to immediately get drunk and have, effectively fits. Like, I remember a woman like ran off into the woods and kind of had to be like carefully tended back into the group with a lot of, whatever had not been held for her over the course of her life that led her to want to hold so much for so many other people. She also never had the tools to face those things for herself. And I think that's a really common dynamic in helping professions.
I think that's why it's really important to always be doing our own work and allowing ourselves to be supported, right? When
Hmm.
you are natural, either a natural giver or you really honed your giving skills as part of self protection,
Hmm.
it's really important to learn how to feel and learn how to receive. It's always the opposite. I like looking at it in the dualities, right? If we're very good at being compassionate, do we also have a strong muscle in being very discerning and critical when needed?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there are
Mhm.
personality assessments that will tell us a lot about ourselves in those ways. I mentioned agreeableness, one of the big five personality traits. And there are people who are just going to be less agreeable, who are less worried about what other people think, and they're more prepared to face themselves, defend themselves. And that can, like any of these tools, it can be used in ways that serve us and ways that are less helpful, or that, help
Yeah.
parts of us and not others.
And like to be more aware, like I could very distinctly see many areas of my life where I was agreeable because I didn't want to lose connection. Like it wasn't actually like genuine.
Yeah.
And then I can see times where I was like super not agreeable, like to the other extreme as a form of self-protection of you are not going to plow me over and I'm going to fight you on this
Hmm.
and we're here to battle it out. And that was because I didn't feel safe to speak from a heart-centered place, that vulnerable place.
Hmm.
So I think there's ways to be agreeable where you're grounded and sturdy in who you are, and it's a genuine agreeableness. And there's ways to be assertive where it's a genuine like assertiveness, and it's not like guns are drawn and I'm here to like battle you and fight you.
Hmm.
And I had to learn the nuances of those things.
Yeah, it's a lot. And all of this is sourced in the body. We might have words for boundaries and things up in our minds, but it's really the sensation of what feels good to me, what doesn't feel good for me, what feels scary but needs to be faced. All of this information really lives in our bodies, and having a regulated system and getting to know how our bodies deliver messages to us is, I think, the most important thing that we could do, and entirely what we're here for. You and me, I mean.
Mm-hmm. And like noticing like incongruence. Like I think this was part of that reaction formation again. I remember distinctive times like being on the phone with partner and he would reveal and say some things that like in my gut felt just ooh, that's not
Hmm.
good. Like I'm not sure how healthy it is to be in partnership with someone who believes this or who lives this way. And then what came out of my mouth were very comforting words towards the person. And it's interesting looking back at it because I knew in that moment there was an incongruence. I knew that something felt off. And I
Hmm.
knew that my words were like saying something totally different that didn't address that off feeling.
Yeah.
And it just happened so fast. And then I just
Hmm.
went with it.
Yeah.
And how often I've tried to like comfort the other while I'm actually deeply uncomfortable
Yeah.
in an
To-
attempt to like keep the peace and keep the person around. And, I- you know, I think now because I have much more body awareness, I would feel it. Like I feel a distinction much more. I've learned how to grow that pause so that I don't go into the autopilot of offering comfort as my go to.
hmm.
Um, I could actually sit with that and be intentional about how I want to address that situation. But at the time, it didn't feel like there was any time to address anything. It was just like,
Yeah.
feel gross? Okay, the next thing you're meant to say is something that makes the other person feel better
Yes.
about
Well, and
themselves.
often people will actually be forking over their painful emotions and asking us like actively to care for them, you know? If you're a people pleaser and you're agreeable and you fear this connection leaving, how hard is it to stay clear in what you're really thinking and feeling in that moment where someone is saying, "Hey, I'm hurting and you could fix this," you know? This is why people write each other letters instead of having face-to-face communication sometimes when you really have to, like, you might call it sticking to your guns, or, you really feel like you need your message to get across and not be muddied.
Yeah, I was all those three things, whatever you said. Agreeable, people pleaser, fearing the loss of connection.
Yeah,
So I'm going to be the sweetest person possible, even when all my insides are saying something feels off.
yeah. It's a lot of work and totally doable work. I want viewers and
Yeah.
listeners to know, to find this different place in yourself, to grow that pause, to recognize the sensations that are coming up for you, and to learn how to really tune into your needs and learn to articulate them.
Yeah, we've been practicing it, and we've seen major shifts in our lives, and we see so many people practicing. And what always amazes me, when we do our priming the body for peace calls, how just walking people through a practice that takes less than a minute is so significant and impactful for them.
Mhm.
And we get to see how fast change happens. And in that moment, it's like a moment that they don't ever lose again. They're like, "Oh, I knew what it felt like in that moment to have my own back, to feel what felt hard to feel, and I was okay."
Yeah,
And
it wasn't an
so,
intellectual
yeah.
endeavor. It was a felt experience that, yeah, the body keeps the score. So this is what we're talking about, kind of evening the score away from intellectual endeavors and into body awareness.
And so, yes, it takes work, but we're working anyways. You're doing stuff anyways. And what about switching things up a little bit? And what Dr. Gabor Mate once said, I was in a workshop with him. I think he said the mind, the body, and the gut are all essential and important, and on their own insufficient.
Yeah,
And I really loved that. It was such a good reminder that we need them to all work together, right? And it's hard to work together with your body when we've only known how to be disconnected from it.
right?
Right. It's hard to use your mind for something that's constructive when it's used to being used in ways that just cause more stress and overwhelm for us.
Yeah.
Right. And it's all things that we can learn and
Mhm.
practice and grow.
Mhm. Yeah, and learn to trust. I'm forever telling people that there's neurological activity in your heart, and I think in your gut as well. Like, these things are connected, and if we're just giving focus to one of them. It's reminding me of that guy from Lady in the Water who only worked out one arm. He had one massive arm, and the rest of him was, regular size. We've all got massive heads, and our brains are going wild in there, and it's so important to connect the dots, the parts of ourselves.
Mhm. Yep. It's good practice. Life
Mhm.
changing stuff. I see it
Yeah.
in people who are in their 60s and 70s. It's just
Mhm.
starting this work or revisiting this work and being reminded that this is where the change happens. It's really
Yeah.
sweet to see. Sweet to see someone at that stage of their life feel the hope that things can change, even though you've got decades and decades of ingrained patterns, but they feel in that moment the difference. They feel what's possible if they were to practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay.
Delightful. Do you have a little practice we could do that does a bit of connecting those parts for us right now to close?
Yeah, this is one that I like. I find it very soothing, which is to feel your anchoring point and just placing, I think, right hand on heart if that feels good. Left hand on the top of your head. And just being here for a few breaths. Just acknowledging the wisdom of the heart. What you could do is on each inhale, just feel your hand on your heart. And then connecting to the wisdom of the mind. You could on each inhale just feel your hand on your head. And then to tie it all together, I like to imagine breathing in, just bringing some awareness from my heart to my head. Breathing out, bringing that energy back from head to heart. Just giving that cycle a few more breaths. Breathing in, heart to head connection. Breathing out, mind to heart. And I like to close with two hands on the front of my body. And just take a moment to notice how that feels. Notice the energy you created for yourself. I feel very peaceful.
Mm-hmm. It would be so easy for me to bypass feelings by just doing such a lovely activity as this all the time.
Well,
Mm,
I think that you might actually feel more
mm,
doing this. I hear often when we do these body connection practices, people are like, oh, I realize that I actually feel angry. I realize I actually feel sad, or I realize I feel really tired. And it's things they would not have noticed if they just were in the mind, busy, doing stuff all day long.
yeah.
Right. So I feel like this might be an okay way to spend your time.
Mm-hmm. And it's growing the pause a lot as well, in a
Mhm,
meaningful way. Yeah.
mhm.
Is there
Yeah,
anything else you want to say about any of this before we sign off?
I don't think so. It's just an invitation for for you to just explore how you might have used some of these tools to protect yourself, and whether there's a desire or willingness to shift more into body awareness and body connection and some grace and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes me realize I do actually have one more thing to say about intellectualization. I think before we got on the call, we were talking about ways in which we gather information with which to intellectualize. And I think we talked about Cosmo quizzes, and it's a really common thing for people to not know how they're supposed to feel. You'll hear that, how am I
Mm,
supposed to feel about this? What am I supposed to do? And they're out there information gathering in hopes that that will make clear how they ought to feel. And the clearest way you can know how you feel is by finding some safe access into your body, like what we did here today. And I think there's a lot of
mhm,
use in intellectual pursuits and gaining information and that kind of thing. And it's easy to distract ourselves from very important feelings and sensations in the process. So coming back to body.
mhm, for sure. Yeah, it's good practice.
Mhm.
I've completed many of those quizzes.
Did they help you learn how you were supposed to feel?
It's funny how when you grow up being questioned about how you feel and being told you're wrong for how you feel, that you then place so much value in someone else knows better than me how I feel and how I should feel. Right? So this coming back to body thing is a reclamation of your own agency and power and connection to self, and that you know your own truth.
Yes.
So yeah, I think at the time, actually, they only made me feel better, those quizzes, if they gave me the answer that I wanted. If they didn't, then I would go try a different quiz to get the answer that I wanted, which, when I talk to people in group calls, I'm like, well, what did you want the answer to be? That's a good sign.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. That's
What did you
very
actually want
relatable.
permission to feel? That might be the thing you actually feel. Yeah, I would just go quiz hopping till I found one.
The right answer. Yeah, totally.
Said, you should feel angry.
Yeah.
Oh, the quiz said I should feel angry. I feel angry.
Yeah. There's a yes no oracle on the internet, which is you ask it a question, it tells you yes or no. And I'll go to that when I feel stymied, and it will reveal to me what I wished the answer had been.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
It reminds me of shaking that 8 ball. You remember the magic 8 ball?
Yeah.
You have an answer that you want. Or it reminds me of like spin the bottle or truth or dare. There's an answer you want.
Yeah.
Right? We know how we feel. We know what we desire. Because your disappointment, when it comes up with something different, tells you something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. Well, if that's all, shall we sign off till next week?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for being here as always, guys. And do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.